Last time we talked about a strategy for entering your information into CowProfits, and this time we're going to get right into it and start with the revenue section and work our way left to right all the way down the menu. So here's the analysis file that I set up for the John and Jane Doe case study, and we'll start right here at the revenue section. Now the first revenue that I have in my information that's laid out in front of me here is calf sales. So that's the first revenue, and the number turns out to be 57,385. And the category allows us to slot this revenue into the fixed categories that CowProfits gives us. So in this case, it's calves. And remember, we're not going to worry about the allocations until the very end of the analysis. Expenses is the very same process. You'll find that there are more expenses than revenues. Always seems to go that way. The first expense that I have listed here is gasoline, and the number is 6,000. And the category is going to be fuel, and it's down in the middle of this drop-down box. We hope to have this rectified so you'll be able to see more categories at once, but that's a work in progress. Then we move on to machinery, and flipping around in my information, the first machine that I have listed here is a four-wheel drive tractor, and its current value is $100,000. And the depreciation type is only 3, but power machinery is what we're going to use, and that gives us an 8% depreciation rate. If you wanted something different, you could go in and choose other, and then that would allow you to say a 10% depreciation rate. But generally we try to stick with either power machinery or non-power machinery, and that calculates your depreciation for each year. Buildings is the same process. In this case, we've got corrals and shop, and the current value is 100,000. And the depreciation rate, there's only 2 choices. One would be standard, which gives you a 5% rate, but you can also go back in and choose other and set whatever rate you want on it. Accounts receivable, in this case, what happened here is that John and Jane Doe sold some hay. So it was hay sales, but they didn't get paid for it. So the hay disappeared. It wasn't caught up in the inventory process or anything, but they didn't get paid for it. So the beginning beginning accounts receivable was $1,200, and that causes an inventory change of minus $1,200. The same story in accounts payable, only in this case there was a fuel bill, and the ending inventory is 2,000. So the story here would be that John and Jane bought some fuel toward the end of the year. The fuel was in their tanks, but they hadn't paid for it. And so that means that there was an ending fuel bill. They owed somebody $2,000, and that causes an inventory change of 2,000. CowProfits looks after all this for you. You don't have to look at it again once you've done this. Supply inventory is a similar thing. They had diesel fuel on hand. Diesel fuel, at the beginning of the year, they had 2,000 on hand, and at the end of the year they had 1,000 on hand, and that means an inventory change of 1,000, and we'll allocate that at a later time. Purchased feed inventory. John and Jane had bought some grain because they don't produce grain, so this was purchased grain. And we have to keep purchased grain and home produced grain separately. And the feed that they bought could have been bedding if it was forage. In this case, though, it was feed. And at the beginning of the year, they had $1,000 on hand. And at the end of the year, they had $500 on hand. Again, producing an inventory change. Unpaid labor is usually owner's labor, family labor that has been obviously occurred, but has not been counted, otherwise would not be counted. And so we'll call it family labor. And they estimate there was 1,200 hours, and they're estimating $18 an hour. And again, we'll allocate that at a later time. Okay, next video, we're going to go up and take a look at the enterprises, starting with cow-calf.